Hey, thanks for tuning in today. We got another good show for you today. I have Ross Brodar on. He's a producer director of the Lynchpin of Bensonhurst. It's a story about Dominick Montiglio. And I don't know, a lot of people know who Dominick is. He was a very dangerous guy in his career. He was around Roy DeMeo. His uncle was Nino GAGGI. This was a bad Gambino crew. And they killed many people. And unfortunately, at a young age, Dominick was brought into this life and was around and grew up around these mob guys his whole life. This is basically a problem with, like the rest of us. This is all we knew at one time. And Dominick got deeply involved in the streets. This story is amazing, this documentary. Ross Brodar and the people did a great job on this documentary. I love it myself. I'm happy today that Ross is here and that I can help promote the show. So stay tuned. I'm going to show a short clip of it, and Ross will be back with us. Thank you.
The weapon of choice, my palette knife. I switched from a 45 to a palette knife. Past, the gangsters, of course, were a big part of the past. Our family goes back centuries in Sicily, and they were always criminals. They were always mafia. What I always knew was that no matter what, I was going to get kind of sucked into that life, because especially when I got back from Vietnam, you know, I did the music thing, I went to college, I did all of this, but I always knew that it was almost like a thing in your heart where you feel that if you didn't do it, you were letting down the family. And when I say I was the last one, I was the last Sicilian in my family. And the Gambino family is the only family out of all the 26 families in the country that, to be a boss, to be a lieutenant, a capo, you have to be Sicilian. And Nino grabbed me one Sunday and he said, you know, now you got to get serious. You know, he said, you got a kid coming on, you got a wife, you're going to have a family. What do you plan on doing? And I said, you know, to tell you the truth, I really don't know. And he said, well, look, and he said, I got this chance to buy this car service. He says, I'll buy it. He said, there's this other guy here, Nicky D'Amato. He's putting up half the money. I'll put up half the money, and you and him could run the car service. It was Plaza Car Service on Avenue U and Kings Highway. That's where I first met Roy DeMeo.
You stop with that camera ready, Freddie.
There was a case in there from 1975, the homicide of Andre Katz. Here's a guy that was a car dealer, and they were all involved in cars and shipping them overseas. And this guy became an informant, and two of these wise guys from the DEMEO crew grabbed this guy and brought him out to a supermarket out in Queens and put him on a bandsaw after they killed him, chopped him up into a million pieces.
They took him to a pantry pride in Queens, and they chopped him into pieces. But before they did that, they put his head in a trash compactor. That's how they killed him. And they found the pieces. The coroner put him together in the back of the parking lot behind the pantry pride. So you see like an arm over here, an arm over there, torso, legs over there. And then you see the head. It looks like a fucking pancake, you know? it's tough to even leave right now. You know, they're pulling all my teeth. They're giving me, the VA is giving me new teeth. I'm finally doing something for the first time in my life that is very satisfying. Everything that I've ever been through is in these paintings. I mean, everything is an experience. I come from a dark place, you know. I mean, I'm a happy little camper, but up here, you know, if it comes to my art or anything else, as a matter of fact, I mean, I can't escape, and you can't. Nobody can escape their past.
All right, so today I'm back with Ross, and Ross, I want to thank you so much for coming on. You know, I watched the documentary. I thought it was amazing. I can't believe how well done it was, you know, and how open Dominic was in, you know, in this interview. It was amazing. I really, you know, coming from my perspective, being who I was in my life, I thought it was just an amazing clip. I think you covered everything in there. But I got to ask you a question. How did Dom pick you to tell his story? Is there a story behind this? Maybe you could fill us in on that, because he really opened up with you, Ross.
Yeah, absolutely, Bobby. Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer is this, you know, Dominic and I initially met at an art show down in Tribeca in New York in early 2000. An old friend of his, Richie Emelo, brought me down to see his show. And when I met Dominic, he was in the corner singing doo-wop with a couple of guys. He was dressed in a nice suit. And Richie introduced us, and I looked at his work, and his work was really interesting, very different. And after looking at it, I said to him, hey, I really like your work, man. And he just looked at me and goes, it's all shits and giggles. and he walked off, and that was our first little meeting. And then it turned out Dom lived in my neighborhood in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, not far from where I had a place. And we got to know each other a little bit. And after a little while, he sort of confessed to me, hey, listen, things are not great with this woman I'm living with. Can I stay with you for a couple weeks? I had a big art studio on top of a loft, on top of a warehouse down in the industrial section at Sunset Park by the waterfront. And I said, yeah, come on down. So 2 weeks ended up turning into 2.5 years. And what happened was, as we started to get to know each other, Dom started to become like kind of my right-hand man, right? Because at the time I'm an artist, but as you probably know, an artist, you know, it's a struggle to make money when you're trying to sell art. So what happens is you end up hustling, and you end up doing lots of other things in order to support being an artist. For me, those things were running an after hours joint, moving stuff from here to there, right? I even had a collection business. I used to collect money for a fish market that had a place in Queens and Manhattan. And before I met Dom, I used to go in and play like the calm guy, and I would have like a meathead with me who would play the nut job, and we would go in the middle of a busy, you know, rush hour for a restaurant, and we would demand the money, and we would carry on and so on and so forth. So as I got to know Dom, I started bringing him into my world and into my little excursions, like being the doorman at the nightclub, right? Or he would come with me to collect money, and he'd play the guy that was calm and collected, and I'd play the loose cannon. And we just started having fun with it. And at that time, he's living in my studio. He's making artwork. When I met him, the company, the place he was with was Red Bull's advertising headquarters. And the guy that owned it, Hansel Kostner, who owned Red Bull, loved Dominic and loved his artwork, all right? And we reached out to him and says, listen, he's staying in my studio. He doesn't have much money. He's a vet. He lives on very little. Kostner gave us $5 grand for him to stay at my studio and just make paintings. And Kostner just asked for a couple pieces. Wow. So we got funded and off we went. And I guess it was probably maybe a few months into this, right? Dom and I are talking, and he says, listen, you know, fucking people think I wasn't in the war. This asshole put out a book, Stolen Valor, says I wasn't there, you know. says he says, you know, Rossi, all these people want to, because we were getting phone calls. Let me back up. We were getting phone calls to do little shows, National Geographic, Discovery. And he goes, Rossi, I want you to be my Jerry Maguire. You know, you're going to represent me. And I would set up these meetings for him, and journalists would come and interview him. But it was always the same shit that they had either read about, heard about, that he cooperated with, those charges. He never really stepped out of that storytelling. So I says, you know what? I'll tell you what, Dom, you can stay in my studio rent free. You give me your life story, and we tell your life story in a way nobody's ever heard it. You give me the real fucking deal, right? And Dom says, all right, deal. And people were asking for his rights, this and that. He says, Rossi, I'm going with you. So we signed the deal. We made a deal that I got his life rights, that I was in charge. And my friend Billy Sharp, who was a filmmaker, started coming over the house, and we just started setting up the mic in the beginning, really not knowing what we were doing and just trying to tape him telling stories. And that just started a process. You know what I'm saying? And Dom started disclosing all kinds of stuff. In fact, you know, there were times we had to just shut the camera off because either he would get too lit and start talking shit that he shouldn't have been saying, which we couldn't put out. Or he'd get too lit and we couldn't understand what the fuck he was talking about. You know what I mean? So that's basically how the movie got going. That's how it got started. And he lived with me for several years. And then eventually, when it was time for him to move on, you know, I had gotten to know the people he grew up with. I had gotten to know guys he was in the war with. I got to know Frank Pergola, who was a detective that arrested him. So then we were like, hey, let's upgrade this. Let's go into HD. We upgraded our equipment. We flew out to different places in the country and interviewed the guys that he was in the war with. You know, we wanted to clear his name. We wanted people to know this guy, because he wasn't just in the war. This guy was a fucking war hero.
I know.
There were articles written about him. He did some really heroic shit out there. And as his friend, the guy that became his friend, it was important for me to help him clear his name, because every internet, you know, knucklehead wants to say he wasn't there and he's full of shit, and so on and so forth. So that's how I kind of became in charge of getting his life story and being the one that he entrusted to put it out there.
I'll tell you, and I'll tell you what a job you did. I mean, I really enjoyed that. You know, I watched a lot of documentaries, and a lot of them are hyped up, but this is like pure truth. I mean, he just, you know, he just let everything out there, and I thought it was great. I thought it was amazing. Now, we all know about the Roy DeMeo crew, his uncle Nino GAGGI. I mean, these are big names in La Cosa Nostra, you know, especially in my world. And we know how dangerous these people were, the people that he was around. It's a shame, you know, watching the documentary, going from a doo-wop singer to a war hero to La Cosa Nostra. And it's something the way that his uncle pulled him in that. And that's like more I would like to talk to you about, and how you got that out of him. And what was his feelings about that?
Well, you know, Bobby, the whole thing was like, again, I reverted back to that Shakespearean concept of, you know, the evil uncle takes the kid from the father to rear him for his own needs and devices, to be like heir apparent to his throne. Because Nino had kids too, but Nino's kids were not in the life, and he didn't want them anywhere near it. But Dom was like the sacrificial lamb, and also because Dom had trained in the military, he knew what Dom was capable of. And then, of course, in trying to control Dominic so tightly, which was a guy you could not control, Dom eventually ended up flipping on him. And that was devastating to Dominic, because Dominic loved his uncle. No matter how that relationship transpired, he loved his uncle. He looked up to his uncle. His uncle was like a legitimate captain. He was a tough guy. He was respected. And, you know, he never wanted to turn on his uncle. But that crew that his uncle was running was like, they were the strong arm of the Gambinos at the time, right?
Absolutely.
They were a crew of serial killer hitters. I mean, they were all had, you know, 50 bodies, each of them, right? I mean, when they took these guys to trial, they said they had over 200 bodies. And that's what they knew about. You know, one of them's cousin had a karting service. So they had the whole thing worked out. They had the nightclub. They would kill people at the Gemini Lounge.
Yeah.
And then they'd call the carting company and they'd be boxing them up and bagging them up and getting them out to the dump. They had a system down that was very hard to penetrate.
Yeah, it was amazing what they did.
And then Nino entrusted Dominic. So like then Nino would travel to Florida or do whatever. And Dom became that intermediary between Roy and Nino. He'd collect the money. He'd oftentimes take it, go to Paul Castellano's house in Staten Island.
Mhm.
So he became more important. And as time grew, his position grew and his relationship between that crew and his uncle elevated. And it was time Dom felt like, you know, he should get made.
Oh, yeah.
His Nino did not want to make him and he kept passing him up. So what Dominic did was he formed a little crew of his own called the Hole in the Wall Gang,
Yeah.
which was comprised of Henry Borelli, who was actually part of the DeMeo crew. Another chick they were selling Quaaludes out of Studio 54,
Mhm.
right? They had like a couple people that they put together and they started doing their own shit.
Yeah.
And actually what happened was there was a guy named Matty Rega. He had a Coke thing going on. He was selling Coke. Dom was getting involved in that. They had done some business dealings and Matty says Dom owed him X. And they had to sit down with Nino and, you know, Nino didn't want Dominic dealing drugs. So
Yeah.
when things got really heated, Dominic took off to California. Nino had already kind of been looking for him. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And what happened was a guy that Dom lent money to who got locked up had gotten out and Dom caught wind of it, that he was back on the street. Dom went back to New York to shake this guy down and get his money. And when he got this guy's name's Jeff Winnick. He's actually a real estate guy. You can see his name all over Manhattan. It's all over the place, right? This guy was scared shitless of Dominic. And the
Mhm.
minute Dom came out and says, "You owe me money," blah, 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 he ran to the feds. And that's how they got Dominic, right? That's how
Okay. Yeah.
they wired him up. This guy Winnick, they wired him up. And when he went to make the deal to get the money, they came in and they got him, right? When he got into MCC, Nino and Neat immediately sent a lawyer to get him out. And Dom said, "Nah, you know, I'm not taking your lawyer. I'm going to stay put," because he knew what would happen
Yeah.
if Nino got him out. He knew Nino was paranoid. He knew Nino was pissed, and they weren't going to take a chance with him. Well, sure enough, while he's in MCC, he gets word from some of the black guys that were there that were part of Nicky Barnes's crew, who Dom knew from uptown. And they told him, "Hey, man, the word's out. You know, they're going to take you out." So Dom says he went back to his cell after Chow hearing that. And that's when he called the feds and flipped on his uncle and flipped on that whole crew.
Well, at that point, he had no choice, you know,
Yeah.
with Nino being paranoid, didn't know what he was going to do. Nino, from what I see, constantly kept him down. He didn't want to advance him. There's two reasons for doing that in the mob. One is just to keep control and thumb over somebody. And the other is he might be a loose cannon and they can't control him.
Yeah.
So it's all about control. If
Oh,
they
yeah.
can or they can't, and that's the decision that they make. If Nino just wanted to keep him there as a hitman or whatever, you know, Nino needed him to do, like a right-hand man, that's why he kept him where he was. He didn't want to give him a button. He didn't want him to elevate.
Yep.
You know, and that wasn't fair to him. You know,
I know, but you know what he did have him
him
do? You know the Vinnie Mook story? You saw that in the movie,
Yeah.
Vincent Governera?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this guy makes a comment to Nino's wife, gets into a fight with Nino.
Yeah.
He hurts Nino. And then 12 years later, Nino says, "Dom, you go kill him. You
Yeah.
blow him up." And, you know, that whole. So he was willing to use Dom to do actual work,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
but he wasn't willing to reward him. He still wanted to pay him $250 a week to be a driver.
That's what he wanted. He wanted to keep him at that spot. He just
Yeah.
wanted to keep him there.
Yeah, and that was his fatal mistake, man.
Yeah. And that's what happened. And now, you know, Dominic's sitting there, he's seeing these guys elevated, getting buttons, making money, putting crews together, and Nino would never give him that chance.
That's
And,
right.
and that's what's wrong. And that's what happened. You know, and then the paranoia sets in. Like, I was in MCC New York for 28 months. It's a bad joint. Dirty mice, rats. I mean, it was just a bad place to be. And being in there and knowing what's coming at you, I don't blame Dominic at all for calling the feds.
Sure.
They gave him no choice. They gave him.
Yeah,
no
I mean,
choice.
look, they blew it. If
Yeah.
they had if they had done their hit, they would have either got him or not got him. But the minute that got out and he had a minute to make a move, it's self-preservation.
It's all about self-preservation though. And people,
Yeah.
people don't understand that, and the reasons why guys like us did what we did and got disillusioned with the life and wanted to get out of the life.
Sure.
Here he is now, faithful, blood relative. Look at the clip him. This is what the life's about.
I
It's
know.
treachery. That's all it is.
And
No,
I
it's
see your
greed and power.
story. You had that too, where your guys started flipping on you.
Oh yeah,
I mean, what are you gonna do? Stand up for guys that won't stand up for you?
exactly. So I'm supposed to go do the rest of my life, and all these guys are gonna go home.
Right.
I was tired of being a pink cushion.
I don't
That's what
blame you.
happens in that life. The more you elevate in that life, the bigger target, obviously, that you are. And I was a big target in Boston. And these guys that I thought I loved, killed with, made money with, helped their families, they turned on me. So what was this life really about? Finally, Dom saw it. He saw it. And once your eyes are open to that, Ross, you can't turn back from it.
Yeah.
Can't turn back from this treachery. It's a terrible life. We got all these critics, like you said, on Google and YouTube, and they talk and come up with these nonsense stories and just don't realize what the life is about and why people made the decisions that they did. And thank God Dom did the right thing, and he was out there for a little while.
Yeah, no, he was out there for quite some time. I mean, he was in the witness protection program for I think 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then finally he just wasn't behaving in the witness protection program, and they kicked him out.
Oh, sure. I
Yeah,
know a
it's
few
like
people that happened to. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, we're done with you, man.
Yeah.
He was getting into all kinds of shit. And that's the thing, Dom was wild, man. I'll tell you a story. Dominic, this is classic Dominic, right? He was down in Florida and he's with his kids by the beach and whatnot. This is the story he told me, and his kids told me the story too, right? He sits down and is drinking. He sits down in a mound of red ants, and the red ants start crawling all over him. And he starts picking up handfuls of red ants and chewing on them, going, "I'm a fucking Vietnam vet. No, nothing can kill me, blah, blah, blah." And the next thing you know, his face is swelling up,
Yeah.
right? He goes into fucking paralysis. He
Yeah.
dies 5 times on the way to the hospital and almost,
Yeah.
maniac. So Dom, that was part of Dom's personality. There was nobody that, was going to control him like that,
Right. Yeah.
If you knew him, he lived in my house. It was ironic because at a certain point he did relinquish a lot of, I call it control, but when I first met, he was drinking all the time, right? I didn't know how bad it was until he's living with me and he's smoking, 2 packs of cigarettes and he's drinking a pint of booze. And, one night I let him go to the store. He comes back all bloodied up. I go, "What happened, Dom?" These guys tried to jump me and grab my wallet, and I got into a fight with these guys, and, he's all fucked up. I go, "Dom, you can't be doing this. You're in Brooklyn. You're a wanted guy, and you're coming to my fucking house.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to live with me, you got to do my rules, or you got to go.
Yeah.
I'm not living in your ashtray with you smoking 3 packs a day, when you get boozed up. Well, I can't do it."
Yeah.
And that began this power struggle between me and Dom. But as the trust grew, he understood I had his best interest in mind. And he also figured if I'm going to stay with this guy, I got to do it his way. And by the time he left, Bobby, I swear to God, he was smoking a cigarette a day, which he would do outside.
God bless.
Wasn't drinking at all. No booze.
Wow, that's great.
So he made a really big transformation throughout our friendship and our process.
Yeah.
And I always thought, he's the type of guy, if you just put him in motion, in the right motion, whatever it was, he would do great things. He needed a good mentor, not an evil mentor.
Exactly.
That's why he was great in the war, because he was doing the right thing. Once he got under Nino's wing, it all slid downhill. All his friends will tell you he was a great football player. He was a doo-wop singer, girlfriend. He had an all-American life.
He did. I tell you, amazing. In the doo-wop, that group cut a few records, didn't they?
Yeah, Decca Records. They were doing great. And he went to his uncle, says, "Listen, we could make it, man.
Yeah.
All we need is you to hook us up with your guys." "No, I'm not doing that. You're drug users, womanizers, blah, blah, blah." Right?
Yeah. See, Nino had his plans for him.
Yeah, Nino, exactly.
He had his
Nino,
plans for him. He wasn't going to sway from that.
yeah,
You know, he destroyed Dominic. He destroyed him in more ways than one.
yeah.
You know, it's just amazing. And I see that, you know, during this with all his artwork, I'm sure that was a great relief for him. He had to vent that somewhere, and it seems like he put it on canvas. He created some beautiful stuff, you know?
Amazing stuff, Bobby. I mean, that was the one thing as an artist, that's how our friendship was formed initially, because I was amazed at what the imagery he created,
Mhm.
how compelling it was. And it felt like each little image was a story. And then when you asked him, sure enough, he had a story behind each one of those images. You know, it was like his nightmares, his dreams, his past, his future, whatever it was. He would put this into these collages. I got one behind me, and you know, it would be all that stuff.
That's one of his. That's one of his paintings.
Yeah, this is one of his paintings right here. You know, like right here it says DEMEO, NYPD. This guy here, it says 86th Street. So, you know, there's all these little things, clues to decipher when you go and look at his artwork, and you always kind of try to find new things. And you know, the film, that was, as you see in the film, you see him doing the art. You know, that was the through line through it. I mean, there wasn't a day that went by when he lived with me that we didn't get up and he didn't get into the studio and start his day with a cup of coffee and a cigarette and put that brush in his hand, and he would just go, man.
Wow.
And sold a ton. You know how many paintings? We sold tons of artwork. Tons of artwork. We even did we did the Outside Art Fair in New York City, which is like self-taught artists. He got picked up, he was put in the fair. We did a thing in Long Island with a collector that put us up at her place for a month, where we just painted every day for a month in her big house.
Wow.
Yeah, no, people loved his stuff, man. They love his stuff.
Are there any paintings left from him?
So I got 3 pieces left from him. This piece right here, I would never sell for nothing in the world.
Yeah.
That's mine. I got a bunch of drawings of his that, to the right person, I might let some of them go.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 other pieces that I don't know. But I have a list of people that have bought his work over the years, because I was his rep for a long time. And one day maybe we'll get a show together, a little retrospective of Dominick's artwork or something like that.
Yeah, we could do that.
I'm hoping when the film gets out there,
yeah,
people are going to really react to it, because, like you said, this is kind of a film like you've never really seen before. How many gangsters you know became painters?
No, listen. I'll tell you, it was so well done. I was so impressed with it. You know, it's just a down to the earth. You know, he poured his life out to us. I mean, I thought it was really great.
Yeah,
I hate those hyped up documentaries with all the pictures and you know, all the bullshit in it. You cut that all out. You came direct with it. I mean, it was really good.
yeah,
Really
no,
good. It was excellent.
I
You did a
appreciate
great
it, Bob.
job,
And we
Ross.
did that on purpose too. We didn't
Yeah.
want to glorify none of it.
Yeah,
It's just Dom. You could just listen to Dom telling stories, you know?
yeah.
He's just as real as it could be.
That's it. That was the whole catch behind it, the hook behind the whole thing.
Yep.
It's just plain, it's Dominic there, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Okay,
And you know, as his friend, man, I got to tell you, like, people say what he was, and they don't know what he was, but I knew him. This guy became one of my best friends. This guy was there for me. Forget about just when we lived together. Like, I'll tell you one story. When my dog was dying one night, and he woke up and heard me, and my dog was taking his last breaths, and he seen what was going on, and he just plopped down Indian style and says, "Rossi, I'm going to sit with you until this is over. You know, we're going to stay with," his name was Texas. He says, "We're going to stay with Texas till he's gone."
Yeah.
And we did. And then, you know, the next day I drank myself into oblivion and whatever. And I remember him carrying me through the fucking house with another friend. I was all, you know, but he was there for me, man. And all those years when he moved away, we probably talked, Bobby, 3 times a week for 17 years.
Wow. Yeah.
All right.
It's a long friendship.
A long friendship.
Yeah.
And went through a lot of stuff, man. You know, he lost a daughter too. I understand you lost one of your daughters. And I'm sorry to hear that. Dominick's daughter, Marina, passed away a few years ago.
Oh,
And he went through that, man. And I went through that with him. And man,
A terrible thing. It's just a terrible thing to lose a child.
Oh, I can't imagine.
tell you. I can't tell you. You know, myself, it's a few years now. I'm just able to start looking at pictures of her and be comfortable with it and smile, you know. It really takes it out of you, my friend. And I can imagine what he went through. You know, our lives with prison and La Cosa Nostra and everything we did. And even though we loved our children, we were never really there for them. You know, Dominic knew that feeling. And then when the time came to be there, it was hard. You know, it was hard for us. Yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And it's sad that that happened with him also. It's just sad with society today and the way things are. This is why we're doing what we're doing, Ross. We want to expose this life. We want to expose these drugs. We want to expose all of this, you know?
Right.
And I'm just amazed at the friendship you have with him. I mean, listen, I'm sure, you know, you're from the New York. You told me some of the things that you were doing when you were hustling out there. I mean, you're half a street guy. That's what it sounds like to me. But even still, sitting with Dominic, coming out of Nino Gaggi and Roy DeMeo and these guys, I'm surprised that you formed a bond like this with him. Because usually people run away from guys like us. They don't want to give us second chances. They don't want to talk with us. They're still afraid to be around us.
Right.
Jesus
No, but
Christ
for
could
me-
come off, yeah. But I'm
Yeah.
saying Jesus Christ could come off the cross and stand next to us, and they would still be afraid. You know, so it's amazing you made the bond with this man.
Well, I know it's
proves what
funny because a
good
lot of
guy
my
he is.
friends they thought it was a bad idea, Bobby. Believe me.
Oh yeah,
And as you picked up on, I was doing some street shit for quite some time.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, Dom had a lot of qualities that I appreciated.
yeah.
I
Oh,
wasn't
sure.
scared of him. I was like, this is a cool motherfucker for me to run with now a little bit.
Yeah.
And even though he's in a predicament, he's got a lot of wisdom to impart too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it was kind of, you know, we had formed a really cool
It
thing.
was a
Like,
give and take. Yeah, it was
yeah,
good.
I'll give you an example, right? Like during the time after 9/11, it was hard to move things around the city because there was stops everywhere.
Oh, I know.
There was checkpoints
I know.
suddenly. So it was like, how are you going to get this from point A to point B without going through all this?
Mhm.
Don's like, you know what we're going to do, Rossi? I'm going to dress up in my military garb. You're going to put on a suit with glasses and this. You're going to be my driver. And boom, when we get to our checkpoints, just, you know, I'm taking them to the VA or whatever. And you know what? It worked like a fucking charm. We'd pull up, they'd see him, they'd see me. They're doing it is, we're doing it
Wow,
all.
look at that. Wow.
You know?
Imagine
So it was
that.
slick. It was slick.
Yeah.
He had, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, he's a street guy, believe me. He's
Yeah.
probably got more schemes, you know, Dominic.
Oh yeah.
It's just I don't know the way this came together and having you on the show today. I'm really honored that you're here, Ross. I have to be honest with you. You know, like we said, we don't want to glorify La Cosa Nostra. We don't want to glorify the life of the mafia. But it's amazing to sit down and hear a guy, Dominic, tell the story. This guy was really in the trenches. This guy was really La Cosa Nostra. With a button or not, this guy was La Cosa Nostra. And just to hear some of the stories that he tells in this documentary and some of the things that he went through. And he just has, to me, he had an amazing life. You know, I know we were talking earlier and about, you know, his problems in the witness protection program and coming out and really never being able to really put his life back together. You know, I got out at 13 and I went into witness protection for 3 years and I'm still having a problem. You know, I'm living back in Boston now. People don't want to hire me. You know, it's just that continuous story about guys like us and, you know, and I can understand and what he went through. And it's tough. It's tough coming from a glorious life, all that money, the women, everything that we wanted, treated like kings, and then it's nothing. you
Right.
know.
Right. What made you go back to Boston to try to set up shop now? I mean, why not go somewhere else where you could be more ambiguous?
Well, I'll tell you the story. When I first got arrested, you know, something had happened and some people were ratting on me. It was murder charges. I'll tell the truth. And I got picked up on a cocaine charge. I was facing 10 years. We were making the deal. I was ready to go. You know, to me, it would have been like a little vacation. But we caught wind that there was a murder indictments coming down and they were on me. So close friends of mine that we did bad things together, you know, made money together, come up on the streets together, were ratting on me. And at that point, I had to make a decision what I was going to do. So I did decide to talk to the government. But as I was talking with the government, the several months, negotiations broke down. Because in my heart, I really couldn't do it, Ross. I could not picture myself on a stand looking at my friends. Because not just the guys that ratted on me, but the other guys that were around me and the family of Philadelphia that did nothing wrong. How am I going to sit there and look at them on a stand? I couldn't do it.
Right.
It's not cowardice. It's not anything like that, because we got the government to protect us, whatever we do. The point of it is that, you know, we believe we were men and men of honor. And now everything I believed in my life, and now I'm going to sit on a jury. I mean, I'm going to sit on, you know, a bench pointing at my friend and talking about these things. I just couldn't do it. So negotiations broke down.
Right.
I went back to trial, got my plea back, and went back to trial. I got 20 years on the cocaine charges.
Right.
Luckily, some miracle, I won an appeal. Went back to trial again on the same charges, found guilty again, but they had changed the guidelines. Brought my sentence down to 15-8.
Gotcha.
Now I'm ready to get out. I'll make it short because this is your show, not mine.
No, so good.
And the FBI came to me over the Gardner Art Museum in 1990. Because some of the guys that were around me actually did the robbery. So they wanted me to help them with that. And Bobby Garrenti was dead at the time, so it didn't matter. You know, and then they came to me and said that I was being subpoenaed to another trial. If I wanted to go or not, I was getting subpoenaed. And they offered me and said, listen, we'll just put you in the witness protection program. At that point, my millions were gone. My money was gone. My wife divorced me. I had nowhere to go. So I went into witness protection. Now I'm down there. I'm missing my kids, Ross. I'm already away for 14 years. I got to do another 5 down there in Tennessee. I'm missing everybody, my mother, my family, you know, and I just said, I'm coming home. And I said this again, and especially Dominick's a perfect example of this. Just because you did that doesn't mean they cut our balls off.
Sure.
That we don't have balls anymore. You know, what do I have to lose at 60 years old? You know, I come home, I mind my business, I do my little show. I'm not involved in La Cosa Nostra. I left $1 million on the street. I don't even want it.
Right.
So if they come to pick a beef with me, Ross, they're the morons. You know,
Right.
they're asking for it, you know.
Right. I got you.
You know, just to give you that little summary.
No, I understand. And, you know, to correlate with Dominick, I mean, people were saying, what the hell's he doing in Brooklyn? Why would he be in Brooklyn of all places? Because, you know, he'd been traveling around the country. He ended up back in Brooklyn and he lived with me in Brooklyn for almost 3 years.
Yeah.
And you know, well, he stayed incognito. Like I said, he stood at my place. I lived in the industrial section right by the waterfront. There was nobody down there.
Yeah.
And he pretty much stood inside and minded his business. I had a van when we went around. We were in a van and whatnot. But, you know, he says, Ross, this is my home.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
I mean,
I'm sick of being in fucking Montana or the middle of, you know, Oklahoma, and nobody, you know, like there's no Italians around.
Yeah.
Can't get a bowl of pasta. He's like, I want to be in New York. Fuck it. If they want to fuck with me. He always had a 9mm that he had brought around with him.
mm-hmm.
You know, he actually, funny enough, Bobby, I got these 2 things. He made these, right? He made this thing here, and he made this. This is a pipe with just some duct tape on it, right? But
Yeah.
he used to have these in his pockets.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And Dom was always ready for war. If it had to go down, Dom was ready. And he just said, honestly, Ross, I'd rather go out that way anyway.
Yeah.
I said, all right, just don't do it with me around, okay?
Yeah. You know, it's sick. And I know that, but I feel the same way. I mean, we were soldiers at one time and we want to go out like that. I got to tell you a funny story. I know it's just so. So, you know, a few things came up around there, nothing major. And I told Paul Tanzo, he does the show, he's my co-host, my cousin, and Paul was a main guy on my crew. And I said, Paul, I don't give a shit anymore. We go out in a blaze. We're going to go out in a blaze, I told him. He says, the only place you're going out is a house fire, he told me. He said, there's no one coming, Bobby, you know? You gotta
Right.
stop thinking like this, you know?
Right.
But I came up in a war in the 90s. I didn't come up like a lot of these guys. I came up in a war, you know, and I had a lot of enemies. There were 3 different factions looking to kill me. You know, that's always in my mind. It's like being a soldier in battle. You're always ready for that battlement again. You're always ready to, you know what I mean, charge up that mound. And that's always what's in our mind.
Yeah.
Then I got to come home a little on the offense because of what I did, you know, and I'm dealing with Boston and Philly, you know,
Yeah.
but I didn't hurt anybody in Philly. They got no reason to, I can understand if they feel betrayed by me, but
Right.
they have no reason.
But
to
you didn't
worry
put
about
anybody away. Nobody went away from your
it.
testimony.
No one went away. Nobody went away from me.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Listen, Dom used to say, Ross, what doesn't happen in 30 years happens in 30 seconds.
This is true.
And he says, you got to be ready to rock and roll. But,
Yeah.
you
Even
know,
faster.
you choose a life and the life comes with X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And guys like you, or guys like Dom, who are stand-up guys, would have never even had to be in that position if the guys you were with were stand-up guys as well, right? You know,
Yeah.
you wouldn't even have had to think about talking to the government if you didn't have guys flipping on you, trying to put you away.
Listen, you know, I accepted that 10 years was nothing. No, it's like something. You're away from your children, but I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to do it like my good time. I'll do a little over 8 years. I'll be home.
Right.
And I can retire because I wanted to get out. I
Right.
wanted to go to Florida. You know, and if I didn't flip my money on the street, some of that would have still been good, you know, but you know, I just didn't want the life anymore. I just didn't want. I got disillusioned with it. And being in there, you know, you're up against it when you're in prison. They get you in there and it's a fight of your life to get out. And knowing that your friends did that to you, I mean, that was it. I had enough. I had enough.
No, that's got to be heartbreaking, man, to be betrayed like that. I
It
don't
is.
know.
It
You know,
is.
I know Dominic, he used to say to me all the time, I mean, when he knew Nino was going to take him out, I mean, this is a guy that raised him.
Yeah.
And then think he was going to kill him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not to mention the shit that he would put Dominic in with the DEMEO crew and the things he witnessed. I mean, you know, bodies hanging up, you know, while
Yeah.
they're freaking eating dinner, there's bodies in the bathroom hanging up. And Roy's going, don't worry, they're not going to stay for dinner. You know, have a seat. You know,
But listen, it was so bad in the Gemini. They used to talk about that in Boston, what Roy and his crew, what he
Yeah.
used to do.
Yeah.
I mean, this was an insane crew.
yeah,
These
he
guys
gave
were-
them all butcher knives for Christmas. You know that, right? For Christmas, he gave them all a set of butcher knives.
Did he really?
Yeah, so they all had their own set because he was a butcher at one point,
Yeah.
Roy.
Yeah, the
So-
butcher, yeah.
Yeah, and he taught them how to carve up bodies and dispose of bodies, and that was Roy's thing. I mean, he liked doing it. He was a
Yeah.
fucking maniac.
Boy, that was their high. That was their endorphins.
Yeah,
Doing
was
that, killing people.
Yeah.
You know, I can just tell you from experience, not that I'm a murderer, I'm not saying anything on the show, but when you're put in that position, it's kind of like jumping out of a plane. You get that action, you get that adrenaline rush, you know, and these guys just started living for that.
Yeah.
This is what creates serial killers. It's that feeling that comes out of it. If you can't control it, you know, you're going to submit to it. And this is what these guys did, you know, and they were just out of their minds.
And then they one up each other, Bobby. You know, like you did that. Oh, watch, I'm gonna go do this. Oh, who's a badder ass than the next guy, and they start escalating.
Yeah, that's what they were doing. They want to outdo each other.
They
They
went out
show
doing
off.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yup.
now they
And
show
Tom, 'cause
both.
these were young guys. These
Yeah.
were young guys.
Yeah,
And they're all jacked up on coke.
yeah,
They're drinking, you know, so they're in this whole different mentality, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if you get past your first murder and it doesn't bother you, that's when you know you're in trouble. You don't see it at the time, but that's when you know it's in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, you should never enjoy killing somebody. I don't care if it's an enemy, you're happy they're gone, don't get me wrong, but you should never take enjoyment in it.
Right.
Once you get to that point, you're all done.
Yeah. Dom said he said he did what he had to do, but it wasn't, it was just business. That's all it was.
The whole thing was business. I mean, there were guys who were hanging out one week and looking to kill each other the next. It's business, you know? A lot of those guys are home. I'm home. We don't bother with each other. There's no more beef. It was business at the time. It's over.
It's over.
It's
Right.
done. There's nothing to talk about anymore. There's nothing to get together with anymore. We're done with each other. The war was over and it was done. And that's how you got to look at it. Look at what we did, Japan did to us, and look what we did in Japan, and they're our allies now. And this is how you have to look at this. They're allies now. That's how this has to be looked at, even little Cosa Nostra.
Right.
You know, my family members got killed, friends got killed, but that's all right now. It's over with. It happened. We were in the life. It's expected, but now we move on. Let's do better things. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And that's what listen, that was the crux of our relationship, was always, how can you morph into that next thing that maybe you didn't get a chance to do? He wanted to be an artist. He sung a bit when he stood with me. He was playing saxophone. He was aspiring to create a new life. Unfortunately, you know, he couldn't stay with me after like 2-3 years. About the third, coming up to the third year, it was like, I was like, Dom, you gotta go.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, enough's enough.
I had a girl that was moving in. I was like, you can't stay here, bro.
Yeah,
And he was like, no, Rossi, I'm gonna go. And you know, but without, Dominic was sort of left to his own devices. He was very self-destructive. Let's just put it that way.
yeah, I see that. Yeah,
And he would drink too much, smoke too much. So over the years, he would go here and there, and he would be bored out of his mind. And instead of being very productive, he'd kind of wallow in his shit. And it was a lot of trying to inspire to get out of that. But in the last years, man, he would tell me, Ross, I just want to get the hell out of where I'm at. I don't care. Just go to a city. I need some action. I need some life. I'm just going numb, just bored. I can't satisfy myself enough to even do art anymore. I'm just fucking bored out of my mind. You think this movie is gonna hit, Ross? What do you think? I said, I don't know. We're trying. He says, watch, when I die, it'll fucking take off.
yeah.
Right?
That's what happens. Unfortunately, that's what happens. And you know, I understand everything that he was going through. It happened to me in Tennessee. I tried to go to Florida. That didn't work. And you know, we always need a purpose and action. The life was about action. You know, and you know, when you get picked up and they take that all away from you, and then you go on the witness protection program, they're on top of you. You know, you don't feel free in there, believe me. They take care of you. The marshals were great. You know, I'm not saying that. They really took care of us, but you're not free. You don't have that life back.
Right.
You know, I can't explain it. And, you know, people, why do you do this show, Bobby? Why are you doing this? You know, it gives me a purpose. I have a purpose with the show. Other than that, Ross, I would have nothing. What would I have? I'd have nothing.
I understand.
I always need a purpose and drive in my life. One of my guys told me one time, they said, Bobby, if there's not chaos in your life every day, you're not happy. But chaos is action.
Right.
I don't know if you can understand that, but the chaos is what drove me. And
Sure.
what drove me, you know.
Yeah, that's
and
what gives you laser focus, right? Is to deal with the
absolutely,
chaos.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and people don't understand that. And then you've got a bunch of us wise guys that are on here right now, ex-wise guys. Well, Michael Franchese is doing a lot of great things. You know, you got Sammy, you got John Panisi, the rest of my friends on here. You know, I'm not going to say that we're all lost, but we're still looking for that action.
Of course.
You know, and that's why we're on here. And we love telling our stories.
Yeah.
You know,
No, and people love hearing your stories, man, because
no, they
again,
do.
you know what Dom used to say, and I looked at your I watched your video with Vlad because I wanted to, you know, see who you were when you, and I picked up on that from you too, which is that, you know, when you get into this life that you guys get into, what you're anteing up with is your life.
Right.
That's your chip, right?
So
So when you go to war, whether it's in Vietnam or in the streets, if you lose, you lose in your life.
yes.
Either by going to jail for the rest of it or half of it or getting killed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's so compelling to the rest of the world is how do these guys make that decision to put their life up and play this game?
Well, you know, we always said we're probably going to either be dead by 40 or in prison for life. That was not our goal, but that was
Right.
our expectation. you know,
Right, and 8 out of 10 of you probably ended up happening to, right?
yeah,
If not
Yeah.
9 out of 10 of you.
yeah.
So
And me, look at me. I was looking at life. Luckily,
well,
I
the
got
way
through the
you
war
dodged that
alive.
bullet is pretty amazing, actually. It's like divine intervention, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because you actually copped to it, but then they couldn't use it against you.
right. And that's what happened. I don't know how it worked out for me. I don't know. It was wild at the time. I was wild with them, but it all worked out.
Yeah, yeah. And the
Well-
show you're doing, you're trying to enlighten people also, you know, to sway them away from the dark side and say, hey, listen, look what could happen. And look at all these different people, what happened to them.
Yeah.
You're doing something good, you know, in the world.
You know, I'm trying, you know, I was a pastor for a short time. I got a degree in theology. I wrote a Christian book. I got a few more I'm working on now. I don't like to push that on the show, but people have to understand how treacherous this life is, how vile these people, how vile I used to be. The things that I did that I couldn't even imagine to do today, I could never do. And things that I did in the past are the type of person I was. Sometimes I look back, I can't believe that I was that person.
Right.
You know, and I'll tell you, it's all about, of course, the part that we pick. But, you know, we were asked that on our show. We do the live show on Wednesday night. And what would we would do over or what do we regret? And me and Paulie both said the same thing, nothing. We'll do nothing over. We don't regret anything. Because that's what made us who we are today. That made me who I am today in Christ. And that made me who I am today as a person walking on this earth. And I believe it was all God's will, you know.
When you were younger, were you religious or did it happen later?
No. My mother started a church in 1980, non-denominational.
No.
My mother was a healer, praise of tongues, all that. It was in East Boston. The neighborhood mothers all joined. They had a nice congregation. Ultimately, one of my best friends, Pastor Lewis, took the church over. You know, he was like us on the street. We were kids, but he changed his life around and started following Christ. I used to laugh at it, to be honest with you. I used to mock my mother, I'm not going to lie. And then something happened to me in 1998. And I seen there was a devil. I'm not going to get into the story, it's too complicated, but I saw there was a devil. I called the church over. Now, this is like 15 months before I got arrested. I called my mother, the pastor comes over, I take the host, and I accepted Christ that night. And I started going back to church 15 months before I got pinched.
Wow.
You know, and I seen the evils that I had done and what was following me. And I decided I wanted to see Christ after that. I couldn't tell everybody. I couldn't go on the street and say, hey, I'm a Christian. No, I'm not coming to work tomorrow.
Right.
You know, they would have clipped me over that. But
Right.
One of my bodyguards came to church with me every Sunday, Tommy. He became born again. He was praying in tongues also.
Wow.
I got those gifts in prison because I was still like, still trying to push it away a little, you know. But when you see the truth, and it's in front of you, in front of your face, and then you really know there is a devil and a Satan, you know, how do you fight against that? How do you refute that now? It's in your face, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The only thing that I could do that night to fight this thing off was, you know, to keep telling them, I don't want to be with you, I want to be with Jesus.
Gotcha.
And that held them off till the church got there, till the cavalry came, you know. But
That's
yeah,
an interesting story, man. Wow.
well, that changed my whole life.
Yeah.
I went from a die-hard gangster, loving what I was doing, love on myself, egotistical, forget about it.
Right.
No, terrible. And to waking up the next day, want to see Christ. So that's how fast things could happen, my friend, you know.
You know, I've always sort of, I wish I could have faith. I don't. I don't, you know, my wife believes in Jesus and she's religious to a certain, you know, she believes in God. I've never connected to it, right? But I've always wanted to, and secretly, because it seems like it would bring solace to a person to believe in something like that, you know?
Yes.
But
We're
I
created
feel
to
like-
believe that, Russ. We're
What's up?
created to believe in a higher power. That's why we always have an emptiness in us, because we don't seek it.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
that's the reason.
I hope one day I have an enlightened moment and maybe I get that before I leave this planet, and I feel that maybe will make me feel good. I don't know.
Well, remember, faith comes by hearing, and hearing of the word of God. So
Okay.
if you put yourself in it, you'll find it. If he wants you, he'll come and get you.
All right. Maybe he don't want me in it.
No, no, listen, look at me. Look what I did in my life. I
Yeah.
came back to him at 38 years old. You could come back to him at any time, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
It's interesting. Yeah.
yeah. I'll tell you, this was a great show tonight. I really love this show.
Cool. I'm glad.
You know, tell us a little more now. You were telling me earlier that this is up on YouTube.
All right. So yeah, let me give you a little film story, right? So
Okay.
when we made the film initially, we were about 10 years into the creation of it and finding all these different people. We decided we were going to try to release it at that point. And there were these guys out in California. They had a company called Distribber, and they are aggregates. This was a new sort of structure where these aggregators are like middlemen, and they take the filmmaker and bring him to the distribution company. And that's how you get your film out there. You give them a fee, right? And then they get a little cut. So at the time, this company seemed good. They had a reputation, so on and so forth. So we made a deal with them. We ended up on iTunes. And a couple months into it, suddenly they're not answering the phone, can't get nobody. And these fuckers disappear.
Yeah.
Now, you know, we're trying to hunt them down on the internet. And lo and behold, on the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, every media outlet in Hollywood, these fucking clowns are there. They robbed a whole bunch of filmmakers, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have their business set up correctly, and the whole thing, you know, I don't know how many copies they sold, never seen them again, couldn't find them. I mean, went after them as you could on the internet, but other than to go to LA and hunt for these knuckleheads,
Yeah, you're not gonna find them.
we got fucked. So then we were like, all right, what are we gonna do? So let's go back to the drawing board, look at the film, fuck that title, let's find some more people. We went back into it and we found a couple more people to interview. We revamped the film, all right? And then we came out with the Lynchpin of Bensonhurst, because that title infers that Dominic, and as you know, what he did, when Dominic went in and cooperated, a lot of guys went down. When the DEMEO crew was dismantled, that really gave a green light for GAGGI to make a move and for other things to, powers to shift. So in a way, he was kind of like a linchpin, right? And he's from Bensonhurst. So we were searching for a while for distribution, and a writer in LA that found me on the internet and heard my story about how I was living with this guy. He called me up and says, how are you living? This guy was like a hitman and you had him in your studio. Like, why did you do that? You know? I told him this story. He says, this is fantastic. Call these guys, Xenon Pictures in LA. I made a documentary. They distributed it. So lo and behold, I called them up. I sent them the film. The guy says, wow, this is incredible. Let's do a deal. And so that happened recently. And here we are now. I mean, we're trying to promote it. That's what I'm doing, talking to you. I want people to see it. I want people to, just makes me so sick that these people hide behind their computers and they just fucking pass judgment and talk shit, and they don't know what happened and they don't know who this guy was. They call him a rat. They call him a drug addict. They say he wasn't in Vietnam. And honestly, none of that shit is true. When your uncle tries to kill you, you're gonna fucking flip. Was, you know, did he do drugs? Yeah, we all did fucking drugs. If you're running in the street, you're doing drugs. What are you talking about? What everybody, nobody else did? So what? Right? And was he in Vietnam? Fuck yeah, he was in Vietnam. So for me, it's been a passion thing forever. On his deathbed, I had them put the phone to his ear. I says, Dom, you know, Dom, I'm gonna take this shit to the end, bro. I'm gonna clear your name, you know, don't worry about nothing. I'm gonna take care of your family with whatever comes your way. You got my word. And, you know, just go to the light, man. Just let it go. Cause he was suffering at the end. His body was failing and whatnot. But, you know, Dom was like, he became like family, man. The guy, you know, my kid, Bobby, a year ago, got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, all right? That was a rough blow
Yeah,
for me and my family, right?
yeah.
And I called Dominic, man. I was beside myself, you know. I was fucking crying. I was a mess. This guy called me every other day. Oh, Rossi, how's your boy? This is breaking my fucking heart for you. You don't deserve this. Your kid don't deserve this. You got to hang in there. Be tough, you know. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. You know, even in his misery and in his demise, he was always reaching out. He was always, you know, Ross, whatever, what can I do? How can I don't know what to do to help you, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I love you. You're my friend. He always, Dom called me up, A champ, A sport. That's how he talked to me. He called me champ and sport, you know?
Mhm.
He was like my brother. It was like my uncle. He was like my knock-around friend. He was all these different things to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was a one of a kind, Bobby, man. He was a
And,
one of a kind.
Ross, from everything you tell him, he's lucky he had you too, my friend. And
I appreciate that.
to hear that bond and what you did and how you're bringing all this to light, it's just amazing to me. But I wanted you to see one thing through your whole experience that you know and seen firsthand was his loyalty and his honor.
That's right.
And you got to see that till the day he died in that bed,
That's right.
because that's what the life is supposed to be. And that's how we were all supposed to be together. But unfortunately, you know, it didn't work like that. Unfortunately, he found a guy and a friend that loyalty and honor could come out through. And you're honoring him right now. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing. You know, and I wish you all the luck with this documentary. Is amazing. I don't know why it's not on A&E or Netflix or something. I don't understand that right now.
You know, Bobby, everybody says that to me. How did this thing not, why isn't it bigger? How come it hasn't gotten out there? I'm really hoping this is the moment, you know, guys like you sharing it with your people. And I'm hoping that when people see the originality and the honesty of it, it will get out there like that, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, let's pray. I'll be praying for you.
I pray for that.
My friend, and God bless. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You're going to be back because I want to talk more about the artwork and these different things. And after this debuts and everything comes out, let's talk about that. Now, you told me right now they could go up on YouTube and see this show right now, right?
It's on YouTube. It's on Vimeo, right? And if they go to DOMINICKMONTIGLIO.org, on the site, we created a site where you see a profile of all the characters and like a bio, and then there's a link to click for the Lynchpin of Bensonhurst, and they can go there, they can click the link to see the movie, they can see all the guys that were in it. It's got Art Ruffles, it's got Frank Pergola, so FBI guys, you know, detectives. It's got guys that were in Vietnam with them, guys that grew up with them, did doo-wop with them. His ex-girlfriend, Susie Cream Cheese, all kinds of people. It's
so it's DominickMontigello.org.
DominickMontiglio.org.
At Montiglio. Yeah.
Monticello, no. But
Oh, no, is that what I said? Oh my,
Yeah.
I'm nuts. I do it.
That's all right. That's all right. You know, I mean, if anybody even Googles his name, it pops right up too. So
Yeah, well, I'm gonna put that link at the bottom after I
Okay.
put this show up.
beautiful.
All right, and Ross, thank you again, and God bless, and thank you for coming on, my friend.
Bobby, it was an honor. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you, man.
Same here. I'll talk
All
to you
right.
soon.
Take care. Talk to you.